Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to another Red Pill Religion Supernatural Saturday broadcast. Red Pill, amongst other things, that belief in the supernatural and transcendent is normal, healthy, rational, and evidence-based. So please give us your support on redpillreligion.com. In these days of social media censorship, we've been chased off of multiple channels, shadow banned in many places. This is the most reliable spot to find us. Please drop a dime in the PayPal or Bitcoin tip jar. We're also looking at getting up on WeGather app, and we're on Subscribestar now. We really appreciate your patronage. We're going to do a fundraiser soon to get new microphones and maybe new server equipment. We're going to see. So please give us a like in the meantime here on Subscribestar, on YouTube. I mean, give us a like, give us a subscribe, tell your friends or enemies about us, and look for us on BitChute and freedom.social and a few others. So it's Saturday night, and we're going to lay back and have some fun, and we're going to talk about the rational basis of the supernatural. First, I'll introduce everybody real quick. First, we have our old friend, the analytic alchemist, Eric. Say hello, Eric.
Yo, what's up, guys?
Dirty heretic anarchist. And also the MGTOW legend, the rebel roughneck Ribs, aka Jackson Thornton, the wild right-wing anarchist. Say hello, Jackson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Available. I like long walks on the beach, candlelit dinners, short walks to the bedroom, and late night pillow talk.
I bet that gets all the ladies. And finally, the Common Neffel, our buddy Neffel, please go subscribe to his channel, the Common Neffel. Say hi, Neffel.
Hi there. It's me, Neffel, and I'm still counting days before I leave to Vegas on Tuesday.
Oh, excellent. Well, have fun. Try not to run into any wicked witches while you're there.
I know all too well that I avoid witches like the plague.
Excellent. It's actually a good strategy as a rule, to be honest with you, especially if they're playing with Wicca. But let me give my wind-up speech about what Saturday night.
Wicca is big gay.
Yeah, there you go. Let me give a wind-up pitch for everybody about what we're going to talk about. We're pretty much going to do a regular Saturday night supernatural, which we get to sit and talk about things that are not religion exactly, but that are involving the supernatural. And let me explain to everybody a real easy, common sense definition of the word supernatural. And we're going to talk about what skepticism is. Supernatural means that which simply has no natural cause, by which we say, or does not interact, is not caused by the natural. How do you define the natural? The easiest way to think of the natural is anything limited to the laws of physics: gravity, light, magnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. Those are natural forces. We understand about the natural. The supernatural is anything that is not subject to the laws of physics. It's not subject to the normal laws of physics or probability. Could be quantum effects, could be something scientists don't know anything about or that we don't understand. Other dimensions of literally forces that are completely beyond and outside the four forces of physics. Things that we know are supernatural include logic itself, and thought, and ideas, and expressions, and geometry, and mathematics. These are not physical. The physical follows them. They are supernatural. So the supernatural is real, and it's not like in comic books or the supernatural TV show. There's every reason to think the supernatural is real, and it is not rational to simply assume that nothing supernatural exists. That is a ridiculous assumption. In fact, we have all kinds of evidence of the supernatural. So what we would say is, and then I'm going to let other people talk and I'll be done. What I'm going to say is what you need to learn is the real meaning of skepticism. And skepticism is not that you automatically dismiss things. Skepticism is when you say, I don't know about this proposition. And you can try to cast doubt on the proposition, or you could say, I just refuse to take a judgment. And actually, quite often, the most rational, skeptical position to think on anything is to say, that's very interesting. I don't know what I think, but that's interesting. Thank you for the information, which is basically my response. If somebody says they saw an alien, for example, I do not have to believe or disbelieve that he saw an alien. He reported to me that he saw something that he thought was an alien. And I could think that he's insane. I could think that he's a liar. I could think that he's actually seen an alien. I could think he saw something that looked like an alien. which could have been a human in a costume, or maybe some other kind of supernatural creature like a fairy or a ghost. Why would I rule any of that out? I have no rational basis on which to rule any of it out. That's what real skepticism would look like. And it turns out the vast majority of men, as well as women, have had supernatural experiences if you simply ask them, or what could be called supernatural experiences. And nobody's got a right to say that they just imagined them. In fact, if somebody asserts that your supernatural experience was just imagined, let's say you encountered a ghost, for example, or like Regs here encountered what he thinks was a skinwalker with a lot of evidence on his side. We don't have to come to a judgment, but we have no basis on which to call anybody insane unless they've got a mental health diagnosis. You don't get to call things delusions. There's no such thing as mass delusions. People have real supernatural experiences, and something's happening called the Great Awakening that I think is real, which is that more and more and more people like are coming out of this frozen spell where we were all afraid to talk about spiritual things and spiritual experiences, but more and more people are just kind of breaking the ice on that and saying, no, I think there's something out there. What do you think, Riggs? Jackson?
Honestly, I can't honestly say yes or no to any of it, man. With the experiences that I've had, in my life with experiencing something that would be considered supernatural. Me personally, I mean, there's so much out there. I mean, you got everything from Bigfoot to UFOs to, like you said, fairies. I mean, I've told a couple of my stories as well. I mean,
just to refresh the audience real quick, and we got a real bad wind or other noise coming out of you, Jackson. Can you mute out and figure out where that horrible? Hopefully, a skinwalker isn't coming from him. Just as a real quick story, he told us last week. It was a great story, and he has no reason to lie. Very credibly about his encounter with a creature up in North Dakota that certainly matches the description of what is often called skinwalker. Up to and including shooting it and then having it disappear on him. We're not going to retell the whole story. Go to last week's Saturday show if you want to hear the whole story. But that did get him interested in he also saw something that some might consider a UFO at a different time and a different location, a UFO or something like it. No
sound check
encounter. And so we're not going to relive that. Go see Saturday's show if you want, but it gave Jackson, aka Riggs, gave you an interest in supernatural stuff in general, right?
Well, I had an interest in it before, but I wasn't really serious about pursuing it until I had these experiences. So, well, I mean, I grew up listening to Art Bell. I'm not sure if anybody knows who Art Bell is.
Yeah, I even have a conspiracy theory about Art Bell, but go ahead.
Right. But I was going to say Art Bell was the man who got me into the supernatural and the unexplained. I mean, I remember listening to him at, 12 or 13 years old when Sirius XM was just XM satellite radio. And now, granted, I'm a lot younger than most, like when it, comes to this sort of thing, but that was where I was first introduced to him. But as far as my experiences, yeah, I mean, I'm 100% on board with the fact that there are things we cannot explain as far as, different rational or even possible delusion that people may have. I mean, have I ever seen a Bigfoot? Well, no, but there's no evidence to say that there isn't a Bigfoot out there. I mean, have I seen the Loch Ness Monster? And well, no, but it's possible that there's a giant monster under that lake.
Well, I used to be very skeptical of those until I realized, my reasoning used to be on Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. My reasoning on both of those used to be that those struck me as very unlikely and probably not real and probably just, local legend and people imagining things and an occasional hoaxer. Until really I started thinking about it and studying it and realized, once you have a rational definition of the supernatural, then and realize that it's rational to think supernatural things do exist and that there's evidence for it, then things like Yetis and Loch Ness Monsters, basically if they phase in and out of this reality, if they're not really literally animals, that there's something more to them, like a skinwalker or to a yeti or to a Bigfoot. They may have the ability to do things like appear and disappear, maybe quantum teleportation or dimension shifting or demonic activity or something else. But no, it's not irrational to think that could happen. Eric, the alchemist, haven't you, without putting you too much on the spot, weren't you telling me once that you and members of your family had encountered something that seemed awful lot like a Bigfoot, but in Massachusetts?
Yeah, back where we
You don't
used
have to give the whole story, but you can tell as much as you like.
Yeah, back where we used to live, it was in a pretty woodsy area, and I had a couple of experiences there. And so did some of my family members, so there's corroboration there at least. You know, I wasn't the only one seeing it or whatever. I think I told you about this. I think I gave you the full story a few months ago, right? Like we did a podcast on this.
Yeah, I don't remember when and where it was, but I mean, if you look at our back shows, look for Eric. Yeah, it was a pretty long and detailed story, and I could see no reason why you would be making the story up or why you.
Yeah, I didn't even jump to the conclusion that that's what it was when I had the experience. I thought it was somebody messing with me, or I thought it was a bear, and so that's why we got like animal control involved, and they didn't find anything. But yeah.
Gaspard, you're making huge noise. Please mute yourself, sir, until you get your mic under control.
The police too. I loved their reactions because they were so chill about it. We described our experiences to them, and you know what they said? They were like, "Oh, yeah, we get those sometimes."
No, didn't he literally say, "Well, we're not armed for Bigfoot. Sorry, but we get."
Oh yeah, one of them like made the joke. He's like, "Yeah, sorry, dude. We deal with like petty thieves and crooks. We don't, like, dude, I don't have a bazooka. I can't handle that." Like,
but he wasn't laughing at you. But the cop was not laughing at you, right? I mean, he was.
Yeah, no, he took it pretty seriously, and he's like, "Look, man, we get these reports and more often than you would think we do." Pretty much.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that was something that was similar to what happened with me and the Skinwalker. Like they were pretty chill about it, but at the same time, the cop that I got, I could tell was a little bit of a rookie. He was looking at me kind of like, like I could definitely tell like his heart was racing a little bit. Like if this is what CSI is saying, it's like, dude, like this might be the first time I've got this kind of call. His
story is graphic. It's worth going back to hear, but like literally he shot the damn thing and plugged it in the chest, and it hit the ground and then got up and ran and disappeared.
Yeah, just to remind the audience, I didn't shoot him with something small like a 9mm or a 40. I mean, this was a Desert Eagle 50 cal, and that round is designed to take out motor blocks.
Yes. You could take out the thief in your next door neighbor.
The gun. Yeah, it says that the gun community is you could take out an assailant in your neighbor's house behind the fridge. Yeah.
Shot the thing dead, and then it disappeared, including the blood and bone. And so he, but the cops got involved and ran the crime scene, and found everything except the body. So, and
yeah, everything except for the body, the blood, the bone, like all of that. But they found footprints. The footprints. They found they'd found evidence that the creature that was there, did have 5 appendages. And they cast the footprints and stuff that were on the ground. Like they looked just like people feet, only the toes were slightly longer and more curved. The CSI determined that the person or the creature was between 5'7" and 5'9" and weighed between 140 and 160 pounds. So
and boom, then the case disappears and nobody has any information on it anymore. Because
they told me to contact the archives office and that they would get back to me, and I hit them up like once every day for an entire month straight, and I still haven't heard anything back, and that was 2 years ago.
And yet if you start investigating too, this sounds crazy, but I'm sorry, it's true. there really is all kinds of evidence the government works to cover these things up that they don't want people to know. And I'm sorry if that sounds like tinfoil hat. I've had experience with it. I've seen it. I've talked to too many people it's happened to. If government doesn't want you, I mean, like, if there were a rash of sudden reports making it in the media of Bigfoot in the area that you say you saw something that sort of resembled that, Eric, I think there would in fact be a clampdown on the area, and all of a sudden the police would have nothing to say, except to take the report and assure you that nothing's going on and leave. Because there's evidence that groups like the Smithsonian Institute, I hate to say it, I used to think this sounded so crazy, but like the Smithsonian Institute appears to work. A lot of people think the Smithsonian Institute specifically, that their goal is to pull things off the market that indicate certain types of past history to be true.
Well, I just don't like how there's literally tens of thousands of reports of giant skeletal bones being excavated from all over the world, and they're literally, I showed you before, all the newspaper articles about that, and they come from, some of them even came from the Smithsonian itself, and then most of them came from smaller independent archaeological.
If you have any handy, go ahead and paste them to me and I'll flash them on the screen. But yeah, if you go out there, you will find there's tons of old newspaper clips, and occasionally even like entries in old books, things like that, clearly showing giants of some sort. I'm sorry, what?
I was cut out for a moment.
All right, and did you have something to add on the topic of giants? No, that's okay.
I'll just say that when you have such a wide array of reports and articles on this stuff, and they were very prominent, by the way, and it seems from the mid to late 1800s to the early 1900s were when most of these reports were being made. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, there's something to talk about there, because it's one thing if, say, we only had a handful of these reports in a specific general area, right? Then we could be like, well, maybe they were hoax, maybe whatever. That's one thing. But when you have these reports coming in from all over the world with the same or similar descriptions, and they're coming from independent.
I don't mean to interrupt you there, but I don't mean to interrupt you there. I gotta go. I gotta cut out.
It was awesome.
Got some stuff I gotta do.
That's all right.
I'll be back on. Yeah, I'll be back on if you guys are still online. So.
Well, all right. God bless.
All right. Later, man.
Yep.
Remember,
appreciate it.
Jackson is working on opening up a new radio station, so we will keep you all informed on developments with that. But yeah, to go back to the giant thing, it is interesting. It blows my mind, because I used to really think the internet was going to bring on this new era of disclosure of everything, and the story was true that it would break through on the internet. And instead, what we're seeing these days, it is the exact opposite. The internet is a lockdown control zone all over the place. And yeah, I used to doubt the idea that there could be giants, because I bought the idea that if you read these things that supposedly debunk giants, they'll tell you that a human being scaled up past about 8 feet is simply like, and by the time you get 9 feet, or let's call it 3 meters, it's impossible. A human being would fall apart. His muscles, his muscles, his bones, his skeleton would not take the weight of it, and it wouldn't work. And then what you got to just do is say, yeah, but who says that a giant has human skeleton and human construction?
Well, it's odd too, because they're assuming that the Earth's environment, its atmospheric conditions and all that have always been the same as they are now.
That's true too, but we have had giant animals in the past. We still do have.
We still find them, yeah.
we still have some fairly.
Do you see like the freaking massive alligators and crocodiles that they find in like Florida and swamps in Florida and stuff? These things are ridiculous. They're like 3-4 times the size of regular ones, and they're like, oh, we didn't know these existed. Well, keep digging, man, because there's a lot of unexplored terrain on this earth, period. Like, just to throw that out and dismiss everything like that, it's like, no, dude, there's too much unexplored territory on this freaking planet for you to dismiss anything so casually like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen enough of the old newspaper clippings and entries from old books and stuff. Either there's a whole industry in fakers, photoshopping things, or no, really, they make efforts to scrub this stuff from the internet because they don't want us to think there are giants. But there's reason to think that there are people, that they're humanoids of some sort. And by the way, guess what? The alien theorists think they're aliens. Okay, they're allowed to think that. Others think there's real races of giants.
Oh.
Some even have the theory that they're Nephilim, that they're fallen angels. I don't hold to the theory, but there's people who think that. Why are we not free to speculate on this? Why?
Well, it's like the newspaper articles, then there's thousands of them. That's already damning evidence itself. But then when you go and you look at history and you see that there are oral traditions from almost every single culture of people for thousands of years that have talked about these creatures and other creatures, and it's so similar. And then you go to the texts that you have. You want to go to the Bible, you want to go to the Quran, you want to go to other ancient texts. They talk about giants too, and they talk about other beings like that as well. So it's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of corroboration going on there. It's pretty consistent evidence over the span of thousands of years, right? So it's like, why can't we look at that? Why can't we? Why is that so hush hush? Like I think clearly there's something going on there.
And the thing is, too, what makes me think something is going on? What makes me think something is going on is the fact, really, that even if you search the internet for this stuff, it's hard to find. And what'll come up first in search results is usually stuff to debunk the existence of giants. Then you dig and you dig and you dig deeper, and you start finding actual material on giants that doesn't match what the debunker sites said.
Well,
and that's a real red flag. And that doesn't mean, by the way, but that's always a red flag, because I've seen in too many other areas that there's actual efforts by the powers that be to censor certain ideas. And that doesn't make every censored idea correct, but it's a red flag that something's going on.
Right. Well, I mean, what was I going to add to that? Something about giants. Shit. I'm blanking. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's my big rant. I think more and more people are figuring out.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Archeology. I think archaeology is going to put the nail in the coffin for stuff like this, because I don't know if you're familiar with the excavation of Göbekli Tepe. Are you?
No, I am not. I don't even know how you spell that.
All right, so that's a place over in Turkey somewhere. I'm not sure where specifically, but that they recently dug up just a few years ago. And so how the status quo said that the oldest civilizations were about, they put it between like 5, 6, maybe pushed to 7,000 years old.
Okay.
Göbekli Tepe the ruins are dated to be between 12 and 13,000 years old. So it's like we're like, whenever someone so dogmatically holds to like, no, that's impossible, blah blah blah, it's like, no, you shouldn't do that, because over time evidence comes out that, hey, maybe that's not the case, and we're constantly changing our minds whether about things, whether it's in the sciences,
like,
or
there's these gatekeepers.
History, or
what's happened is there's these gatekeepers who say, like, we represent the science, we represent the history, we will tell you what you are allowed to think about, and even what you are allowed to entertain or take seriously, and we will mock anything else. Hey, I see Gaspard joined us. Have you got your sound working, Gaspard? Gaspard. All right, well, Gaspard joined us, but he doesn't appear to want to say anything. That's all right. Neville or Gaspard, if you want to talk about giants or anything else, let us know.
The
I don't want to take
I've
over
ever had the supernatural experience was weird dreams and premonitions.
Well, weird dreams and premonitions, here's the thing. Some people will try to
and synchronicity.
Some people will try to tell you those are all psychology and all, whatever you apply on them. But I've had premonitions that came true. I've had visions that came true, and they were intense, and they felt distinctly different from a dream. And they were really powerful. The most powerful one was, you believe me or not, the most powerful vision I ever had was in October of 2011, when I was starting to watch politics and the presidential campaigns. And I had a religious vision. Believe me or don't care. I had a religious vision that was intense. It was powerful, and this was 2011, right? And it was I saw Mitt Romney lose the presidential election to Barack Obama the next year, and then saw Donald Trump being sworn in January 2019. And it came with such certainty that I actually laughed out loud, because at that time, remember, it was 2011, that was the most hilarious thing I could ever imagine happening. It was just like surreal, right? It's like, really? Really? But it was so powerful, I just knew it was a lock. And I never doubted that was what was going to happen. And so, you know, you can laugh at that or not, but I would tell people over the year, who's making the typing noise?
Sorry, that was me.
All right, if you want to end the conversation, Gaspar, let me know. But I'll just finish my story of my vision. It was a very interesting vision, too, because it came with absolute certainty that this is what would happen, with a clear message that I could have no effect on it either way at all, and that if I tried to have any effect, I would have no effect, and that nobody would believe me. And I was, and it was a message that I got because I had been a real well-known political blogger, and I was thinking about going back into blogging politics, and I had been thinking about doing that, and boom, that came as the vision. This is what's going to happen, and you can do nothing about it. Go do something else. So that's kind of when I got into men's rights. But yeah, I mean, that's a supernatural experience straight up. It was not anything except I knew for certain that that event would happen. I did not know it would be positive or negative. When I had that vision, it literally made me laugh. I couldn't stop laughing. Donald Trump president, really? I know a lot of people aren't laughing now, but that's all I thought. But I was so certain. So I was like, even up to election night, I'm like, this is going to be amazing. He's going to win this thing. I don't know how, but he's gone. And he did. And it was like, oh, it was pretty intense, I'll tell you. So, yeah, anybody else ever have anything like that happen? Like you, Neville or Gaspard?
Well, let's see. Well, related to that topic, okay, so I want to ask, what do the people here think about synchronicity?
I buy it.
What?
I
Sorry.
buy it.
Yeah. So I think that if we break out of the idea that things need to be reduced to actual causation as we would use to predict material phenomenon or like logical conditionals, then you know, since we're not, you know, if we're not trying to ground it in actual empirical practicality, then
Yeah.
then we sorry, what?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Synchronicity was a concept especially forwarded and favored by the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. I think, and you'll find a high degree of people who think like Jung, really like the concept of synchronicity. And I guess you would say the way to sit it would be that the universe seems to have these synchronicities or these events that transpire that seem to have no causal connection, but they happen and they're significant.
Yeah.
And they seem to be meaningfully related, even though they seem to have no causal relationship. Just like you say something like, wow, I wonder if I should marry this man. And then you turn the radio on and the song is playing, you should definitely marry this man, or something like that, right? And that's a synchronicity. That would be a primitive one, because
yeah, and so playing devil's advocate is like maybe coming from a materialist or reductionist point of view, they would say, well, it's a coincidence and the connection you made was completely subjective. But here's the point. That is not necessarily that the fact that it's a subjective or arbitrary connection does not take away from its meaningfulness to the user or the viewer. So so although some connections can be arbitrary and subjective, you know, if you're not claiming to try to reduce it to some kind of conditional sequence of events that's meant to predict empirical reality, but instead is just supposed to deepen your insight about things, then it is very usable information. And so what's more is I take it past a little bit further than just synchronicity. So I put synchronicity on the table, pertaining to what you said about things like premonitions, right? If someone came at you and said, "Well, you were just hallucinating," and tried to debunk it that way, the blanket still can be synchronicity. In my opinion, it's like, well, it could have been a delusion. It could have not. That's not the point. It gave me insight about reality that was subjectively meaningful to me. So there's that, and the fact that it cannot be reduced to some kind of empirical causation is irrelevant and beside the point. And then the other thing is, I think that people who have engaged in mystical practices of some kind can perhaps alter their cognitive faculties such that they're able to make more connections that may cause some kind of feedback with their senses. Like it seems like people who do a lot of chanting or meditation, and this is just a theory, I'm just going to say, seem to open the door to some kind of acquired synesthesia, to where maybe they see things in their minds that might be hallucinatory, so to speak, regarding certain practical events. And whether they're hallucinatory is beside the point if you think about it from a synchronistic point of view, because it is deepening and giving you a more rich perception of reality.
I think I see exactly where you're going with that.
Yeah, and so that's how I approach what we call a supernatural phenomenon. That's how I think about it, because I'm not even going to try to reduce it to logic. Because a person could say post hoc ergo propter hoc. Just because it happened after does not mean it happened because. Well, that's not the point. Okay, if we put meaningful coincidences on the table, I don't need to prove that it happened because I don't need to prove that it was caused or as a result of something, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about more qualitative connections. Yeah.
I understand, and let me just say the one thing I will say about Jungianism in general, and the concept of this, and this is something that I also think infects Jordan Peterson, which is why I'm not the world's hugest Jordan Peterson fan, but this kind of Jungian concept of synchronicity and things like it looks to me like an attempt to bridge the gap with the spiritual. It looks like they want to, like Jung wants to stay with it. What not exactly atheistic, but what my friend Chris Lansdowne has called Gnosticism. It's modern Gnosticism. It's this idea that, well, we don't need to determine whether this is true or not. It still has meaning. It still means something. It's still kind of accepting the idea that there's no ultimate truth and that there's no objective truth. And even when I listen to you, it almost sounds like, I used to think this way too. For the longest time, even after I got religious, I used to think it in these sort of psychoanalytical terms, like I'm going into this religion, and these rituals are just, activating primitive neural wiring and from my subconscious, and fulfilling a deep primitive need that's not entirely rational, but still has meaning for me. I used to kind of think it that way. And then at some point a switch went off and I said, no, actually, I believe supernatural experiences are real, and that the materialist atheist who calls himself a skeptic, the materialist naturalist who calls himself a skeptic, should at some point be faced with skepticism with his own biases. To presume that nothing supernatural exists at all is simply a presupposition, right? So let's say you have an encounter with what appears to be the ghost of a dead ancestor of yours, and you have a conversation with it. Now, we could take the Jungian approach of saying it doesn't matter whether that encounter with the ghost or not was real, it was still meaningful to you. That's how Carl Jung would address it. And I would actually say, for a psychoanalyst, that would be the best attitude. Like, I'm just here to be your psychologist. I'm not here to tell you what your experiences are real or not. So For a psychoanalyst, that would work. It would work for somebody like Jordan Peterson. You say you met an angel. Okay. Well, what do you think the significance of that encounter was? Would be the correct answer from a psychoanalyst. But I do see that this fear of just saying, let's say I encountered an alien, I encountered an angel, and what I very much believe was an angel. You have no right on any level to say that you know that I did not in fact meet an angel. You have no right to assume that I imagined it. You have no right to assume that I'm mentally ill. You have no right to assume that I'm making it up. You have no right to assume anything. You can say, I don't believe in angels, so I think maybe you imagined that, but that would be all you'd be able to say. Do you see what I'm saying there? You have no right to invalidate other people's experiences with the presumption that they imagined it in the first place. Do you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So like if we decide to look at it with a purely empirical attitude of like, oh, I'm going to go off of only information that's been replicated. I can't, like, what am I going to do to falsify what you said?
You're not right. You
Yeah.
can't. Right. I state that I believe angels are real. I state that I believe angels do not have physical bodies, but they sometimes manifest physically or in some form we can detect, and then they're gone. You'll never get an angel on a photograph. They're not subject to electromagnetism or light or gravity or heat. They're not responsible. They appear and disappear as they will. You are free to assume I imagined my angelic encounter, or just as free to assume I met some kind of creature.
Yeah.
You don't get to say it didn't happen.
Yeah. So let me add this. I understand that that maybe. Okay. Well, let me just make sure to go down only the right rabbit holes here. Let me think. Okay. So
by the way, all conversations on here are officially considered philosophical conversations, and nobody has to be nailed to their position on anything forever. These philosophical conversations. Don't
yeah.
expensive. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand. So okay. So all right. So yeah, like I can't just negate any person's subjective. If someone claims to have done something, I have no reason to know where that happened. Okay, so we did that. A person could argue that, like, well, if it contradicts everything that science has found, then then it's a contradiction, right? And for the most part, I mean, if we're going to wield that information in that way and like plug it into some kind of deductive proof, yes, you could say that. But also, if we're dealing with empirical information that is mainly, cumulatively increasing the probability of certain things, then if we really wanted, we could question whether we've found the exception. But then, if you're claiming that you found the exception, then a person might want some proof. Well, that's if we're going to play that whole game of, is it going to be empirical or rational proof? But if we decide that we're going off of qualitative meaning, and if we decide that we're going off of qualitative meaning, then we are not necessarily trying to reduce it to anything empirical or rational, where it's more, and I'm loosely going to say it's more on the side of induction. It's connecting things via similarity with no rigid operators. So the similarity is going to be some kind of meaning from the subjective mind or user. Now, if you want to take it further than that and say that supernatural things actually are real, that's one thing. But I think the overall mentality of synchronicity is very much in line with how we interpret literary symbolism. Like how, if you read literary criticism, a person will read a poem and then they'll connect it to all these outside works sometimes, maybe, that the author didn't intend, and it doesn't matter that the author didn't intend it. The person viewing it saw that information and considered it meaningful, and so they weren't necessarily wrong. We're not trying to make propositional proofs when we do literary criticism or appreciate art, and so the whole point is even if it's something delusional, and we could call it that derogatory, but like even if it's something that you're seeing in your own subjective mind, if we're not trying to reduce it to propositions or some kind of empirical matter, then what's the problem? This
Yeah.
is
Yeah, I would let me just comment that one of the reasons I'm down on Jordan Peterson these days is not because he's not right about some things, but his other things. He's a Jungian psychoanalyst, and as a psychologist, Jung can be very useful because Jung tends to not to draw judgments at all on supernatural things. He believes they happen whether they're real or not, and that they're real to people.
yeah.
And so that they should be treated seriously regardless of what position you take on whether they're real or not, which is the perfect attitude for a medical doctor or a psychologist or psychiatrist to take, because you can tell a delusion from a spiritual experience. They really can. A really interesting guy to read if you're ever interested in the psychoanalyst field is a guy named M. Scott Peck.
Okay.
He has a very famous book that has been a bestseller and a perennial favorite since the 70s. His name is M. Scott Peck. The book is called The Road Less Traveled. He is a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I forget which, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And he's interesting because you read the first part of the book and it's all about psychology and all about how to grow. And it's all written in psychologist terms, but it's got a kind of a spiritual bent. And then in the last quarter of the book, you find out he's actually a very serious Christian, and he does not do any proselytizing or trying to convert you, but he just talks about how all these ideas he's giving kind of mesh so well with his work as a psychologist.
This is the ghost of Jackson. I just wanted to let you know I have gloriously returned from the dead.
Oh, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here. I think the only one I want to just end my rant on this to say, though, I think it's really important to bust out of thinking you have to even defer to materialist, naturalist sentiments. I think that's almost a neurosis we've all gotten. That we automatically have to defer to the materialist, naturalist who says, "I'm a skeptic. That wasn't real. You imagine that." You should have to prove that proposition. That's not the skeptical proposition. That's just your belief. It's not a science, you know. And I think people should take the spiritual real seriously. How about you, Riggs, Mr. MGTOW man? You think they should take the spiritual seriously?
Well, of course, anybody should take any experience that anybody has had seriously, be it not only supernatural, but as far as anything else in life. Now, because you take them seriously, that doesn't necessarily mean that you believe somebody. I mean,
That's
you can
right.
still listen very intently to what it is that they're saying. Let them say everything, about their experience to you. Ultimately, in the end, everything in life, not only the supernatural, but outside of it too, is completely subjective to the person that's either, speaking and the person that's listening. Now, I understand personally that with my experiences that not everybody's going to believe everything I say. I also understand that not everybody's going to believe everything that anybody else says.
No,
But
right.
ultimately, in the end, it's basic human decency to at least hear them out and at least give their experience, an open-minded thought to what's possible. That's all I got to say on that.
I completely agree. Go ahead. What?
Can I just say one last thing before we move on from the synchronicity situation? Let's now you mentioned Jordan Peterson, and I just want to point out as we all know, we do not have to necessarily associate synchronicity or the use of it in an idea with Jordan Peterson, because I myself am personally not a Jordan Peterson fan myself. I think he the way he presents his ideas is almost purely in rhetoric and almost never arguments, and just but the thing is, that aside, there are other manifestations of this kind of point of view, like for example, I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan, and that's something we can talk about if we want, but like the way Joseph Campbell thinks about myths is he handles it a little bit in a softer fashion, and doesn't take it literally, but he considers the values in myths and religion almost necessary to living a human life. And now the reason when atheists try to pose the question, what actually does religion offer that isn't that can't be given to us by atheism or the state? It's like, well, the way to answer that is a way to wield certain kind of information in a more meaningful way. For example, if you get into if you read about how to like memorize things, and the way they memorize things in like the Renaissance is they tried to turn things that we might call rigorous information into people or places or people doing things with objects, and that's like personification. That's almost like an element of literary symbolism. So it's us humans turning things into more meaningful information by turning it into people. And so like it's a way of, sorry, what?
Yeah, slow down. But yes, I think what you're saying is you're a fan of Joseph Campbell and the way we can use myth and symbols as a way of relating to the universe, right? I mean,
yeah. Sorry. So I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. So that's what I'm saying. And I don't think we ought to necessarily associate synchronicity with Jordan Peterson, because he's probably already come and gone for the most part.
It's just he's a Jungian, and he thinks like a Jungian, and he thinks that way. That's why he's evasive on God questions and other religion questions, and it is why a lot of us religious folk find him frustrating. But the bigger point, though, even there, you just mentioned somebody I detest, and that is Joseph Campbell. I really, really detest the work of Joseph Campbell. Although he has some valuable insights, I'll grant you that he does. The problem with Joseph Campbell is he ultimately himself was a materialist. And it shows through, and I think it mars a lot of his analysis. He can be occasionally brilliant, but his materialism mars him. And his hostility to religion, which really showed in his later work, really shows the flaws in it. He was an angry apostate, and I think it flawed a lot of his analysis. What were you going to say there, Riggs?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree and disagree with you both as far as Jordan Peterson is concerned, but I just had to say real quick, Gaspard, dude, that was very well said, man. Yeah. I honestly could not have said that any better myself. So I'm not going to lie, I'm kissing ass just a little bit, but dude, very well worded, man. Very well worded.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks.
So, but as far as
very well, I mean, all of these things, even if you were to make the arrogant assumption that none of it's real, you should treat it seriously anyway and not assume you get to nitpick it and analyze it or twist it. You know? Yeah.
Hey guys, gonna head out for a bit later.
God bless you, Neffel.
Yep, Dave, I appreciate you having you on.
Anytime.
All right. So anyway, I get that was just my point. Even if you bow to the ridiculous, in my view, materialist naturalist assumption that all these things are merely imagined, which is an assertion without evidence, you should still be taking them seriously and not abusing people and saying, well, we know you just imagined that. However, if it means something to you, feel free to enjoy that assumption. You know, it's a very condescending and pompous thing that a good psychoanalyst would never do. Right, but you got these people they call themselves skeptics, and they feel free to abuse people that way, and say, "Oh, I know you just imagine that. Oh, that's just you imposing your meaning on that." Like, really? Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. Who are you to see either way, right? That's my attitude to people who come on like that. You just don't have a right to experiences.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree. Now, granted, I mean there are certain things that you can take seriously and you can't take seriously. I mean, for example, I don't mean to go on a short little MGTOW rant here, but if somebody comes up to me and says something along the lines of like, "Well, I was raped," like, well, if I were to say, or like, I could honestly look at that person and say, well, I mean, yeah, rational skepticism kicks in. It's like, well, I'm not going to say that it didn't happen, but I'm not going to say it did happen either. I mean, you're telling me this.
That's rational skepticism. I don't know whether it happened or not. But go ahead.
Right. It's like, I was going to say, I'm not going to say that it didn't happen, but I'm not going to say that it did happen. Like, obviously, you feel open and comfortable enough to just come up to me and tell that. So, which obviously would point towards the didn't happen side, because most people I know of that suffered a traumatic event like that usually don't like to talk about it. Then again, if it happened years and years and years ago, and they went through their proper therapy to where they're able to feel comfortable enough to talk about it, well, maybe, maybe it did. So I mean, with me, I mean, as far as like the not taking it seriously part, there, if somebody were to just up and straight up just blurt that out at me, never even met this person before, I mean, obviously I'm not going to take it very serious. But as far as like the supernatural and the stuff, I was saying here, I mean, I've had personal experiences. I've known a lot of other people that have had personal experiences. And yes, I mean, definitely, I take that seriously right off the bat. Would I necessarily believe them right away? Well, no. But if there's like details in their story, like there was with mine, or there have been with anybody else's, I mean, who's to say that it's not, that it didn't happen to them? I mean, it's not like we have technology to go back and look at their memory and actually play it like it would be a movie. That would be awesome if it did, because you guys would probably shit if you saw it.
Well, let me show you. Let me show you two guys that I'm skeptical of that I nevertheless find interesting, and am open-minded enough to look at and listen to, and have listened to in depth. Eventually concluding, I think neither of them is correct. I think they're both spinning tales, but the tales they spin are interesting. David Wilcock and David Icke. I don't know if you guys are familiar with David Icke. I think he's a little batty, but I think some of the things he says are true and some of them are not. And David Wilcock is the same way. I ultimately have concluded I don't believe aliens are real, but these gentlemen have, and claim to have encountered them and spoken to them. And that the aliens have a base in Antarctica where they interface with the world governments. And they go into other weird stuff like, yeah, they're actually, the reason nobody goes to the moon is because there's actually secret moon bases already up there. And you're being sold a show by the likes of NASA, and there's ancient civilizations in Antarctica. And at some point I decided I do not believe them, but that does not mean that I think everything they're saying is not true. I have my own elaborate theories as to what these guys are, but they're interesting. And David Wilcock claims to be a Christian, although, he reads the Bible and says he has the real way to read it. And if you read it right, then you can find the proof of the aliens in there. And I actually think his theories are mostly wrong. And I think he's consorting with demons, just to put it on the record. That's what I literally think most of the alien phenomenon probably is demons, and that they're lying to us. And I have evidence for that. But you know what? You guys can look and you can decide for yourself. What they do point out is to many things that are true. That it's freaky weird that nobody can go to Antarctica. That there is a censorship around ideas like these. That if you are, I mean, David Icke recently had a film made about him, and they were completely censored and shut down on their showing, because he says, there's a secret Kabbalistic world government that's trying to hypnotize and kill us all, in cahoots with aliens. And I think the only part I don't believe is the in cahoots with aliens part, because I think I believe a lot of the other stuff. So I mean, to me, though, this is what rational skepticism looks like. You listen to a bunch of different sides, and you listen to a bunch of different people, and you decide who you believe and who not, based on what makes sense to you. I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to the establishment authorities, whether it's NASA or the U.S. government or the FDA or the UN or any of these, or anything coming out of the big universities, I don't think I believe anything they have to say either. I'd say David Icke is about as credible as the president of Harvard at this point, in my eyes. Do you know what I mean? Was that too much of a rant? But does anybody know what I mean? Who the hell's credible anymore?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good point.
Yeah. So the way I think about credibility is if we're going to classify it according to what kind of reasoning it is, surely we're going to call it a matter of inductive probability or strength instead of any kind of deductive inference. And so what that means is that hopefully cumulatively a series of empirical instances is going to cause a party, institution, or individual to be highly persuasively competent in a certain area, and that is going to, again, that's only ever going to be a matter of probability. It's never going to reach 100%. And so the risk ultimately is the users to take. So, like, when you're watching the Weather Channel, and we all know that the weather, whether wherever you get in it, is not always going to be 100% spot on, and sometimes they're dead wrong. But sometimes that's the only information you have, and ultimately it's up to you to decide whether you believe them or not, based on whether you're going to go out and what risk you're willing to take. And so ultimately, who is credible, or what we decide, whether we decide to defer to that credibility, is a matter of probabilistic risk that is totally up to us to decide whether we're going to take it or not. Like, for example, if we go to the doctor, because we really need something done, we trust someone in shrubs to stick a needle in our arm because, we just may not know how to do it. But in other cases where the risks aren't so high and necessity isn't so serious, we can appraise the risk and the probability and decide whether it's something we want to act on, because that's the nature of risk.
That's right, and we should be able to do that with medical things too. If you don't believe what the medical authorities are telling you, you have a right to say no to things. And we do know people lie. I want to get to, but I want to get to something more fun. I brought this up last time. I'm going to bring it up again. The mother of all conspiracy. This is the touchstone for modern conspiracy theories. I know Riggs loves this video. So do I. Everybody should go to Truthstream Media, and see the real secret hidden in Antarctica. This is such a good little 45-minute film.
I am so going to get these guys to come onto the radio station. I want to talk to these guys personally.
Yeah, because, and I'll just give a general shout out. Okay, Caspar, you're making too much noise again. Please mute yourself.
Sorry, I'm making some coffee. Sorry.
And what I like about Truthstream Media in general is that they never try to sell anything. Like for example, I was talking about David Wilcock and David Icke. They have books for sale. They have a message, a point of view. They want you to join their whole cult, basically. And so there's reasons to question their credibility. They're not exactly neutral. They've taken a whole lot of stands. What the Truthstream Media guys do, they're this married couple with kids. They go out and look at these stories, but they don't try and figure out tell you what to think of it. They say, this is what we can definitively say we know, and this is what we can say we don't know. And the things that we can say we know are true are ridiculously mind-blowing sometimes. And this one on Antarctica is just like, wow, I did not know this.
So yeah, if you guys have not seen that video yet, please go see that video. My mind was blown.
This is like something out of.
So I cannot promote this video enough. I mean, it's free. It's only going to take 40 minutes of your time, and trust me when I say this is not only informative. I mean, it's extremely informative.
Yeah.
But that also raises, one of those, or it causes you to ask questions like, what the hell is over there? Why has this information been held from us? Yeah. This is truly eye-opening. Now, I'm not somebody to go out there to necessarily promote stuff hardcore. I mean, I hardly even like videos on YouTube. I hardly, comment on videos. This is one of those videos that I was like, yes, like, share.
Yeah,
so just giving you guys an idea. I mean, if somebody like me who's picky about their content's promoting the crap out of this, something worth watching.
I would just to give people a few things about Antarctica. If you go look at Antarctica right now on Google Maps, you're going to find that it just shows mostly a white sheet and a few known, like CIA and other bases and science stations, but the whole thing covered is a big white sheet. And although if you look into it carefully, they'll admit that it's classified. and that they're blotting it out on purpose. And if you look close, you can even see on the Google Maps that they blotted things out. There were numerous military bases active from the United States, the Germans, the British, and quite a few others, all throughout World War II and beyond, through the the 40s all the way through the 70s. And if you go through old newspapers and old footage and old movies that have been found, Antarctica was, you find even photographs of Antarctica that are like lush areas of trees and forest. We have reports of areas of hundreds of square miles lit by hot springs that have lush vegetation, animals and vegetation never seen anywhere out there. Evidence of other civilizations, businessmen and geologists and stuff talking openly about exploring it for oil and platinum and uranium and gold and all that sort of stuff. A whole new frontier to be explored. And then in the early 70s, there was the United Nations Treaty where all nations agreed they would do nothing with Antarctica. They would allow no business development, no commercial development, no military development, supposedly only peaceful scientific exploration. And no one would go there or do anything there that was at all interesting. And boom, for more than a half a century, that's all we get is Antarctica. There's nothing useful there. It's a big white sheet and some penguins and some old bases and a little bit of weather monitoring. And there's nothing else in Antarctica at all. And you can't go there. And if you try, you can't go there. If you even Google up stories saying you want to travel to Antarctica, you'll get immediate stories coming up about why it's too dangerous to try to go there. It's almost like you're in the Truman Show, that old movie from the 90s with Jim Carrey. Too dangerous. You don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. If you got $50,000, you can buy a ticket. For $50,000, you can buy a ticket to get a flyover of part of Antarctica on a prearranged tour. And you get on your prearranged tour for $50,000, walk around, get back in your plane, go home. Nobody's allowed to go there. It's a whole continent. It's bigger than Europe. And they assure us there's nothing interesting there. Who believes there's nothing interesting in Antarctica? But if you really,
I'm just gonna call right off the bat, bullshit. There's nothing interesting over there. If there's truly nothing interesting over there, why do we have CIA bases there? Why was the Nazis over there? Why is it that Dick Cheney himself went up to Antarctica 4 days before he came back for Trump's election? What the hell is going on up there?
If you listen to the flat earthers, they have their own theory. If you listen to hollow earthers, they have a theory. If you listen to the alien guys like David Wilcock and David Icke, they'll tell you that the alien civilizations that we've been interacting with since the Roswell incident back in the 50s, that they have their bases there and it's locked up there. There's other stories of ancient civilizations like the ancient Atlantean civilization being there and still active. And you know what my attitude toward all of it is? I don't have to say I know any of it's true or not true. The one thing I do know is not true. The one thing I'm positive not true. The one thing I'm positive is not true about Antarctica is it is a big ice sheet with nothing interesting but some penguins. That's what I know is not true about Antarctica. I think we're free.
Well, I can tell you right now that penguins are pretty interesting creatures, especially when you hold your hand out the side of the boat and one of them jumps right into the boat thinking you have food. I mean, come on, that's cool as hell.
You're right. You know what? There's nothing but penguins in Antarctica. You have convinced me. There's nothing of interest but penguins. But penguins are worth extensive study. They are worth. The CIA.
I would agree.
Should be studying penguins. We agree. We're in solidarity with CIA penguin scientists. If you are a penguin scientist with the CIA, we salute you for your fine work. I just want to know what else they're doing in Antarctica, because I think there's more than penguin studies and weather studies, I think.
Well, if you think about it, right? If you think about it, maybe the leader of the penguins is up there and he can talk and communicate with humans. And maybe that's why the CIA is up there, talking about how penguins are made and giving us all the information we need about penguins.
Maybe the penguins are our lizard overlords.
Oh my God, no friggin' way. Are you serious? Oh man, we're screwed now.
We are. By space penguins.
Right, space penguins. Oh shit, space penguins.
Well, see, that's the thing.
It's just like that.
When you've got this, that's a big secret, guys. Investigate the Antarctic Treaty and realize that that is a treaty between over 100 countries, and in over 50 years, allegedly, nobody's broken it. Bullshit again. There's not a treaty on planet Earth in 2,000 years that has held that long between two potentially belligerent powers, let alone over 100. You're gonna tell me
It's the penguins, I tell you. It's the friggin' penguins, man.
Yeah, really, it's all got to be penguins. It's the penguins are going to be in charge. You know, you saw that movie, right? March of the Penguins.
I have, and a Happy Feet is definitely, the movie that we're all going to end up abiding by. Those are going to be that's the New World Order right there.
Happy Feet. Yes. They were making us ready for our new penguin overlords. I like this.
Oh my God, man. It all makes sense now.
It does. No, I mean, it's also fun to make. There's the other thing about skepticism. It's okay to make fun of this stuff, too. It's okay to laugh. What's not okay, in my view, is to dismiss it all. I mean, I had at least two members of my family. I showed that Antarctic documentary. And they both had this faux skeptic attitude that is so common these days of, I'm not convinced. It's just a bunch of vague generalizations. And I'm like, did you not watch the movie? They don't make you draw any conclusions. They don't try and, in this movie, they don't try and tell you it's aliens or other civilizations or an NWO conspiracy or any of it. They just say, here are facts you can state about Antarctica that I bet you didn't know. You know, stuff like, did you know you're not allowed to go there? Because you're not. Go ahead and try. You can't. You know that people who try get, either die or get turned away? Because they do. Go look on the internet, and then you keep being told you can't go there. Google openly admits on Google. Let me just add this one more. Google openly admits on Google Maps that they censor it and only show you a big white sheet on Antarctica. But they admit they're doing that, which means there's something underneath Google Maps that Google doesn't want you to see, and that the government doesn't want you to see either. What might that be? Go ahead.
Maybe it's Area 52.
Well, I'm telling you straight up that if you believe in aliens, and I think intelligent people do, I have my theory, you can have yours. If you believe aliens are real, then it actually would make sense. A lot of things would suddenly make more sense if there's alien bases in Antarctica. A whole lot of weird things would make sense.
I mean, where did cell phones come from?
Right.
Maybe it was Area 52.
Why does nobody go to the moon? The flat earthers will tell you it's because nobody goes to the moon because the earth is flat and you can't go to the moon, and we're under a dome. Okay, but if they're not correct, then why does nobody go to the moon? Because there's no good excuse for nobody going to the moon, unless, of course, we've been going for the last 50 years, but they're hiding why we're going and who we're going with.
Eddie Bravo has entered the chat.
Oh, Eddie Bravo, yeah.
What's up, Eddie Bravo?
What is Eddie Bravo and what does he want?
Eddie Bravo
bro.
is the other.
What's going on, man?
Eddie Bravo is the dude who's always sitting there on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's the most off-the-wall conspiracy theorist there. He invented a certain brand of Brazilian jiu-jitsu that propelled him to fame, etc.
Oh, okay.
He is the spokesperson for the Flat Earth Society.
Basically, he is an MMA fighter turned uber intellectual, which ultimately means he does a lot of drugs and entertains, some really interesting theories.
Now, just for the record, I am very much of the theory. See, this is how much of a so-called conspiracy nut I am. Joe Rogan is controlled, and so is Alex Jones.
Uh-oh.
I really believe both of those to be the case. And,
plot twist, they both work for the CIA.
Yeah, bro. This is Eddie Bravo, and I'm a true skeptic, and I'm here to tell you that everything that you're saying, man, it's all complete bullshit.
Whatever.
The Earth is flat. There's nothing but a sheet of ice up there in Antarctica. That's all it is, man. That's all it is.
Look, Eddie. It's entirely possible. That's what Joe always begins to fucking say.
Nothing possible about it, bro. I'm gonna go back over here and do another line of coke. Give me just a minute. I'll be right back. Yeah.
in other words,
picture of the moon, it's pixels.
He's the typical skeptic. He's the typical skeptic who thinks he just gets to declare bullshit on everything. Just declare bullshit. There, conversation over. It's bullshit.
No one's
Pretty much.
Alex Jones and Joe Rogan were not coked up when they did that podcast.
Oh my god. No, I really do. I'll literally say I think Mossad has long controlled Alex Jones, and CIA. And furthermore, there's reason to think that is true. And that he's a Turner property, that Alex Jones is anyway. And I think that Joe Rogan is similarly controlled, because I think what guys like that, and I think what Art Bell is they're not exactly controlled opposition so much as they are release valve. Like the real stuff that's going on, they like put this imprimatur of somebody like Alex Jones tells you some truths that he's allowed to tell you. There's other things he's not allowed to talk about at all. And they go ahead and let him get the kooky veneer, just like they let Art Bell have its kind of spooky middle of the night.
Yo, man, how dare you talk bad on Joe Rogan like that, man? He's the guy that comes in, man. He knows it all, man. He's got they're really big knee pads, and he does what he needs to do with me every single day. He knows what's going on. Okay. I'm the one that controls him. The earth is flat. I'm gonna come over here and do my drugs now.
I know, guys. Like, see, this is why skepticism is cheap too. You can be skeptical of any damn thing. Oh, I love this guy.
I'm skeptical of your skepticism.
So basically, Alex is avoiding talking about classified information every time he says, "I shouldn't even get into it."
I shouldn't even get into it. Honestly, I took an oath to secrecy, Joe. They have talked to my family. I have the documents, but I'm not going to show them.
Hey, yo, Alex, man, I'm right there in that same boat with you, bro, man. I totally get it. We're being paid big bucks by the big government to support my drug habit.
Oh, we're all going to get assassinated now.
Oh, yeah. I'm waiting for my car to explode. The second I turn the key. Oh, no. It was suicide, even though there's 2 bullet wounds in the back of my head.
Did you know that Hillary Clinton's critics are known to commit suicide in very dramatic ways that way?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, they commit suicide with 2 bullet holes to the back of the head. Yeah, that 100% true there. You know, it's the fucking penguins, I tell you. The penguins.
It is the penguins.
Nonsense. It's because they have so much guilt about what bigots they are that they can't stand to stay alive any longer. That's why they killed themselves. It has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton.
Man. I'm such a big supporter of Hillary Clinton right over here, man. I can't wait for my time to commit suicide the same way. I'm gonna go back over here and do drugs over here this way. Now, Eddie, if you're listening, brother, hit me up. You and I need a beer, bro.
Joe Rogan would not be allowed. Owen Benjamin and Vox Day and a few others have me convinced that no, really, even the guys you think are independent like Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, no, they're allowed to be a certain way, and that's it. Like Joe Rogan was allowed to play with the idea that the moon landing was fixed, and then withdrew it and all that. By the way, I'm convinced now that the moon landing was lied about. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know they lied. I know they lied about something. They lied about something in a big, big way. We could talk about that sometime. But if you see a movie called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, a guy named Bart Scherbel has some footage that he got leaked from NASA that completely damns the Apollo 11 astronauts.
Wait a minute, Mr. Red Pill. Hold on now. You actually think the moon is real? Is that what you're telling me?
I think the moon is a round disc that spins around on our heads. That's what I think.
You know what my issue?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying the moon landing is real. Yeah, the moon's totally real. There's a big base up there right now. They're going to be the guys that are coming in there. They're going to fire big lasers right here, right on our place, right here. By the way, if you haven't checked me out, go to my shop and get the best kind of stuff you can get. Everything that a man needs. You got all this testosterone in this soy boy society. Right? It gets bad.
I am a I'm a very avid supporter of super male vitality pills.
I am still not convinced. I've heard people deny it, but I don't think I've heard a convincing denial. I think that Alex Jones is Bill Hicks.
Oh shit!
Y'all know what's crazy? Y'all know what's crazy? Little bit of personal information here is I live in Austin, and it's kind of crazy. Like when I'm walking around, I'm like, am I going to bump into Alex Jones one of these days? I know people in Austin who've said they've seen him walking around.
Well, they probably have, because I have a bunch of doppelgangers. So there's that.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, though, I make fun of Alex Jones because I'm a fan of Alex Jones. Love me or hate me for it.
I am not a fan of Alex Jones, but I do very much believe that much of what he talks about is fake, but much of what he talks about is real. I think he is what's called controlled opposition. And by the way, I'll just recommend.
How dare you think I'm fake? How dare you think I'm fake? I'm over here. I do this every single day. I sit in front of this mic. I come over here and I talk to everybody every day. How dare you think I'm fake?
We'll close on this because I'm not going to stand by it. But I actually wonder, watch this movie, Alex Jones as an actor. Is he a dead comedian? Or just look at Alex Jones as Bill Hicks. They will put together there's some really convincing photographic evidence that Bill Hicks faked his own death and that he became the character Alex Jones. And there's a lot of circumstantial evidence for it. Now, it may not be true.
I believe the Earth is flat before I believe that.
I don't know, man. Look at that picture. Look at that picture. Well, I don't know, man.
Oh shit, man! They both smoke cigarettes. It must be the same person.
I would like to play a campaign of D&D where Alex Jones is the dungeon master.
That would be
oh, damn! It is him, just a little bit fatter and with a business suit.
Well, there's a lot of theories about it. There's a lot of guys who put it together. Others say they've got.
That guy looks like a trustworthy source.
Other guys say they have photos to prove it's not true. You can actually believe whatever you want to believe. Alex Jones and Bill Hicks. This is the one that's the best one. Toby Langford's is the one really put together best. Is Alex Bill Hicks?
Oh hell, we just stumbled across your porn collection. My bad.
The hell this is two stupid people dancing in their underwear. Okay, whatever.
No, it's all good. I'm just giving you shit, man. I'm just giving you shit.
Okay, so can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, and then we're going to close it up, I think. Go ahead, Wesley.
Okay, so now I understand not everyone may kind of accept the framework of the synchronicity and how to handle information such as like spiritual experiences and meaningful coincidences. But if we're talking about, if we're comparing it to the degree of the kind of weaponized atheism denial that kind of goes hand in hand with reductionism and throws out any kind of emergence, wouldn't you say that that's probably the framework of synchronicity is at least a fallback before you go that far to materialistic atheism?
Yeah. Like I said, my feeling on the whole Jungian phenomenon is that it's probably useful for psychoanalysis. It's probably just I think inadequate for a life philosophy long term. Because if you go through life and you have spiritual experiences, you see signs, you see wonders, you see what religious people would call graces, or even the demonic. Auto assuming that those are just things that you're imagining, but that are simply meaningful to you, is not necessarily the most practical or advisable long-term attitude. Because if you assume, which there's at least as good an assumption that there is a higher power than not. If a higher power is trying to tell you something and you're ignoring it by insisting that you imagined it, that's a hazard too. You know what I mean? Or that it was just my subjective experience. It has no ultimate meaning. Like, no, really, if something otherworldly is trying to tell you something, you're not safe to assume that it's all in your imagination, is my only thing that I would say. That's why I think it's inadequate as a life philosophy. It is a good starting point, though. It's a very good starting point to just and it's ideal for like a doctor or a lawyer or a psychotherapist, like that's the ideal attitude for them to have. I don't have to judge your experience at all. I don't care whether you saw was the 3 foot tall alien that you saw real or not. Well, let's see. You don't normally have symptoms of delusions. So what do you think seeing the 3 foot tall alien meant? That would be the way a sane person would do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so while you'd say it doesn't necessarily capture all the value of some of the content that you would say is important, at the very least, it's a decent epistemic framework for holding some of the information in a kind of structural way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly correct, and I think that's a valuable exercise. So.
Yeah,
well, before we wrap it up, I'm hoping to end this on a funny, really quick.
Yeah.
One last question though, and I need everybody to listen really, really intently if they could. Who the fuck is Bill Hicks?
He was a comedian, like he's a kind of atheist comedian, right? Isn't that right?
I wouldn't even call him an atheist, but although he was down on religion, which was all trendy back in the day.
He hated religion. He loved psychedelics. He believed in a higher power, but he did not think religion had a single fucking clue what it was talking about when it came to it.
Yeah.
So in other words, Joe Rogan. It's Joe Rogan back in the day.
He really was foolish on that regard, I believe. But he actually correctly identified a lot of what he was a truth teller. He was a truth teller. I don't agree with him on some things, but he was definitely a truth teller. A very funny comedian. You listen to some of the stuff he was saying in the 90s especially, and it's like, wow, he knows exactly how the world works. Because everything he was saying was more or less correct. And so there. Bill Hicks is totally...
Well, I was hoping it'd be hilarious, like, oh yeah, well, Bill Hicks is actually, Alex Jones. It's like, well, if that's the case, who the fuck is Bill Hicks?
well, the theory would be that Alex Jones is the fake personality of Bill Hicks.
So I think
if you believe this conspiracy theory, which may not be true,
I think the final conclusion of all this, that we need to end on is that at Antarctica there is an ice pyramid and George Soros dwells in it.
Well, there's something. What we can definitely end on is there is something in Antarctica, and we're allowed to know what it is. And that all by itself.
Is that where? Yeah, is that where George Soros has his bank account? It's over there in Antarctica. Paying all these Antifa people to come around and fight.
Maybe the giants and the Munchkins and the Penguins rule us from.
The Giants built the ice pyramids, and the whole scheme was directed by
the Penguins.
By Eddie Bravo. It was directed by Eddie Bravo.
Oh yeah.
Penguins.
Yeah, that's right, brother. It was directed by me the whole time.
That makes sense. All right, everybody, listen. We're here every night. We got stuff every night. We're going to have a response to Vox Day at some point, too, so that'll be cool. So, everybody, please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Please tell your friends or enemies. Well, and be able to be tuned in next Saturday. We'll see what Jackson Thornton's up to in his radio station project. God bless everybody.